Up until a few months ago, I was an innocent bystander in the pool of fandoms, blissfully unaware that there was a piece of literature circulating the Wattpad community, slowly growing traction over the years like a feverish snowball that kept getting bigger and bigger with the upcoming announcement of a movie that would be the avalanche to end it all. The book I'm referring to is the young adult phenomenon known as After. I can already feel the hatred of hormonal raging teenagers ranting off in the universe about how much of an idiot I am. And to be fair, I've already been slut-shamed for disparaging the legacy of this questionable novel. But that still doesn't change my opinion of what this book is. An example of toxic relationship. To clarify, I'm not a chick lit kind of girl. I'm more of a science fiction meets science fantasy / action adventure, thriller, edge of your seat, kick butt, save the world kind of girl. So a book like After flew completely under my radar of knowing it existed. But when my best friend, @Britannia_12, talked about how good of a book After was, I was surprised. She's not a type of girl who'll read when movies fulfill her entertainment much better. But when I heard her say how much of a good book the After trilogy was, it piqued my interest. If there was something out there that could make my non-book-loving bestie turn to a bookish life, I wanted to know what it was. It had to be amazing, right? Little did I know how wrong I'd be. Right off the bat, I don't want to bash all the chick-loving girls out there. Teach their own, and that's all and well. But there's a fine line between goopy, syrupy, campy chicklet and then straight-up stories that are pandering toxic relationships to a generation too blinded by a pair of green eyes, chiseled abs, and beautiful hair to realize that what they're reading is unhealthy. I should have seen the red flags, however, from how enthusiastic my friend was about the whole series. I mean, this was coming from a girl who loved Twilight with a passion in her middle school days. I just don't see why I didn't see it coming. First of all, the novel is a fan fiction, which, for the record, I am a fan of fan fiction, but it's notorious for, well, let's just say for a lot of reasons. After is about 18-year-old Tessa Young going off to college at Washington State University. She's immediately portrayed as the perfect little innocent girl because if there's one thing the author wants to get across is that Tessa has never even thought about sex. She is so pure and wholesome that she has a perfect matching boyfriend to go along with it. His name's Noah, and boy, you better not hope for good things for Noah because, well, the author didn't want to give him a happy ending. Tessa's going off to college, but Noah isn't because he was, held back or something. Her super protective mom is all proud of her, and basically she's a smother mother right off the bat. Your typical YA unlikable parent, because if you like the parent, how can the romance blossom? Anyway, Noah and Tessa's mom drop Tessa off at her dorm, where things are pretty cool until Tessa meets her new and life-changing roommate, Stephanie. Stephanie right off the bat shows she's not a normal friend. She's a cool friend because she let 2 boys into the girls' dorms. One of these boys happens to be the male lead protagonist / love interest. We know this because of how she describes him. My eyes shift to the brown-haired boy leaning against the wall. His hair is a mop of waves on his head, pushed back off his forehead, and he has metal on his eyebrow and lip. My eyes travel down his black t-shirt to his arms, which are covered in tattoos as well. Not an inch of untouched skin is seen. Okay. So if you didn't guess by the way Tessa ogled him, that was Harry, or Harden, if you're going by the movie and published series version. Oh, by the way, this is an old One Direction fanfic, just FYI if that wasn't made clear. So anyway, Tessa's mom freaks out about boys, while Tessa tells her mom it'll be all good. Noah and her mom leaving Tessa alone with her cool new BFF, Steph. Steph, being the cool friend, she invites Tessa to a frat party, and that's where things go cray-cray. Tessa has an encounter with Harden that ends up with her crying. That happens a lot. And she swears that she never wants to be around Harden or his friends again. Then there's another party on Friday. Tessa gets persuaded to go, and stuff happens. Being a typical crazy college party, Tessa gets involved in a drunk version of Truth or Dare where things get a little bit more than uncomfortable for her.
Are you a virgin? Isn't this a kid's game?
So basically with that, Tessa decides she's had enough and goes away upstairs where more of this happens. Now basically this is the whole gist of the book that makes a teenage girl swoon. And I mean, it's a pretty solid formula. Let's not beat around the bush. After is essentially a teenage 50 Shades of Grey minus the BDSM. There's actually more parallels to this, as both 50 Shades of Grey and After are fan fictions, which, as a sidebar, I gotta say, the amount of fan fiction that gets published and turned into movies is astounding. But that's just how corporate America works. Find a sexy sex cash cow and milk it to death and then move on to the next cash-grabbing sensation. Honestly, the formula is so simple I could possibly replicate it if I got desperate enough. Anyway, my problem with After isn't the fact that it was a fanfic that's gaining traction into the mainstream, and it's not the fact that it's exploiting a lot of heart-throbbing teenage girls by making bank at the box office. My problem with After is that it's a textbook definition of what a toxic relationship is, and teenage girls are too infatuated to even see it for what it truly is. Throughout the course of the book, After checks off all the signs of a toxic relationship with a very severe type of abuse, verbal abuse. Now, I've heard enough times from some friends defending this book that verbal abuse isn't an abuse because Hardin never hits Tessa or lays a hand on her. But as I'm sure many people already know, there are other ways to hurt a person beside from physical. The signs of an abusive relationship are as follows. 1. The person does something, denies it, and then exclaims, "You're crazy." This is also known as gaslighting and is something Hardin does frequently throughout the series. To gaslight someone is to make them question their own sanity, to make them feel like they're incapable of reasoning, and a way to make the victim feel incapable. 2. Accuses you of doing things you aren't doing. This is known as projection and is yet another factor Hardin Scott is guilty of having. Every time Tessa is found by Hardin to be talking to another guy, he gets very belligerent and makes accusations about why she's speaking to them. This isn't cute bad boy jealousy, this is straight up controlling. Then on top of that, he has the audacity to make Tessa feel bad about it. That's just not something that should be romanticized and then pandered to teenage girls, but it's exactly what's happening. What I really want to focus on, however, is number 3. They do a great job of promising a great future and then deliver a nightmare. Now this brings me to the climax of the first book and the earth-shattering revelation made that's supposed to make all the jaws drop. So if you didn't want to be spoiled before, although I'm not sure why you would be here if you wouldn't be, but here's the deal. For a majority of the first book, Hardin has been trying to seduce Tessa into sleeping with him as part of a bet that he made with his friends earlier in the story. Him and Zed were betting on who would be able to take Tessa's virginity first, and the winner happens to be Hardin. Now, what Hardin needed to clinch the bet was evidence, and this came in the form of him taking the bed sheets that were used the night Hardin decided to paddle up Tessa's Coochie Creek. He shows them to his friends, and the bed is revealed to Tessa as a final, "you just got punked" moment. This behavior should warrant Hardin going to jail. His actions are manipulative and disgusting and absolutely abhorrent. But the most terrifying thing is that after shedding tears and crying to the moon and back about how much he really loves Tessa and how he felt bad doing it, Tessa eventually takes Hardin back. What kind of message is this for young girls to be listening to? Not a healthy one, that's for sure. Media has warped what is deemed acceptable and what's morally wrong. And as it continues to blur the lines, one can't help but think that if no one points out what's wrong, how are future generations going to grow up? The actions of Hardin Scott can't be justified, no matter how many court cases you put on the matter. There's so much I can get into the mental instability of each of the characters in the book, but that would take an eternity. My point in making this was for others to be aware and to know that abusive behavior is not all right, and that abuse can come in many different shapes and forms.